a lot of soul.
This is Bass Talk Live. Your host, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrat. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, APCO, Big Bite Baits, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Thursday, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where myself and Matthew are going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Yes, it is another BTL Watch Party, this time the Santee Cooper version. And Matthew, how you doing?
I'm good. I got up on time. I'm in the studio on time. Everything's good to go today. I was, if you didn't listen to yesterday's show, mysteriously an hour of my life was missing.
Tuesday show.
Yeah. I just
missed another day.
now a whole day's missing. No, we're good to go, but they are off and running on Santee Cooper. What is it called when it's the middle of the three? It's not the home stretch. It's not the
midpoint.
Opening. Yeah, the midpoint of the back-to-back weeks on really historic fisheries at unique times of the year because of the COVID and the pandemic. But they got Gunnersville in, and it was a grinder. And now they're at Santee Cooper, and a lot of guys talking about how big it was, how they had to cover so much water, that they were impressed that they got through it with their lower unit and prop shafts that weren't bent up. But not many guys in this field with a lot of experience on Santee this time of year. That being said, there is an inordinate amount of Carolinians that fish the Bassmaster Elite Series, and several of them have grew up literally on the shores of Santee Cooper. Obviously, you talk about Patrick Walters, but a lot of guys with experience on the fishery, just not this time of the year.
Yeah, as always with the watch party, we're going to have our guy, Mark Menendez, on to break down the action and, more importantly, give the fans an opportunity to ask Mark questions about what's going on one of the most recognizable lakes in the southern part of the United States.
Isn't it like 2 or 3 lakes? Isn't there like Moultrie, and then you have like canals that go between them?
And you got the river.
I was talking to Dave Rush, and he was saying that up there in the cypress, like swamps or forests, that there's an area up there that before GPS, before you had your little trail, breadcrumb trail, when he was growing up, that guys would literally tie ribbons on cypress trees and stuff to keep from getting lost. And there's stories of guys who got lost in there well past tournament hours and had spent the night just in this massive maze up there when they didn't have the GPS. That you kind of slide in there and all of a sudden you're in, everything looks identical for acres and acres and acres, and you can't see, and you have no idea where you came from. I would not do well in that scenario without GPS. I would.
Sure you would.
I would be horrible. I would be lost. I'd get one row in of cypress and I'd be done.
You'd be fine. No issues there. So a lot going on, obviously, this week. A lot going on next week. We have another hurricane that is headed for the state of Louisiana. Maybe part of Texas, maybe part of Mississippi. And how is that going to affect your event?
I don't know. I got the Bass Nation Regional leaving tomorrow, actually, for Toledo Bend. It looks like it's going to be on the outskirts of it. Like I said, I mean, when you got a Category 4 hurricane, I mean, the fishing kind of takes a back seat to making sure all those guys that are down there are safe and okay. But
yeah, they're getting hammered.
Yeah, we're still planning on going down there, but I mean, it's going to be a little different. I went and looked at T-Bend for a day, and there were a lot of break walls and a lot of stuff that could have been destroyed but was just damaged from the last hurricane that rolled through last month. So hopefully it will dissipate and not be as bad as they think. But as of now,
Yeah.
Still planning on headed down to Toledo Bend and maybe just have to sit in the cabin for a day or two until. I mean, that's not a place you want to be out in when it's dumping 5 inches of rain and blowing 25 or 30.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, and then headed to the Open, and who knows how much it'll dump. I mean, it's going to go right up that path all the way through Alabama. So who knows what it'll do to Neely Henry, which is a current-driven kind of river fishery with the Coosa spots and stuff in it. So who the heck knows what's going to happen the next 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Where are the elites next week?
Chick.
That shouldn't get affected, should it?
I might. It's a lot of water coming.
Yeah.
Just depends on what path it takes. All right. I want to let everybody know we have our U.S. Open coverage set for next week. We are going to be live, and all of these times right now are Central times. I'm not doing West Coast time. So on Monday, the weigh-in's going to start at 4:30 p.m. Central Time, and we're going to go, obviously, until the weigh-in ends, which typically will last about 2.5, 3 hours. And then once the weigh-in wraps up, we will have a post-game show right there from the weigh-in site with, hopefully, Dan O'Sullivan and the man that makes things happen, Mr. Billy Egan. Dano may have to leave to do the, what is that called? The story,
The
for
press release?
There's some.
The gamer?
The gamer, yeah. So he might have to leave, but definitely Billy will be there. And then if there's any anglers that remain after the weigh-in, if they were one of the last flights to weigh in and they had a really good day, we'll get them on. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we will start coverage at 4:30 p.m. Central Time.
Do they have a roster out yet?
I don't know. I haven't looked.
Let's see if they have a roster out yet, because you're
I
not
think the
going to have
number was
Cliff
240.
Kirch. Well, yeah, I
240
know what
was
the
a
number is. I just want to know if there's a roster.
I don't think so. Now, are we going to do shows that morning? I'm going to leave it kind of up in the air. Tuesday, definitely not, because we have a big guest. It's a local celebrity coming to school, media person to speak to my
at
media
school?
close. Yeah. And
Like the weatherman?
no, actually, she is a sports reporter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So she's,
Not the one who fishes, is it?
no.
She moved up to Tulsa, didn't she?
Yeah. So she is going to be at my school at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, so I cannot do a show Tuesday morning. But I'm still looking to fill morning shows along with the coverage of the U.S. Open next week. So just stay tuned. Check out the website. The other thing is I want to let everybody know, let me flash this up real quick. In case you didn't listen to the show, that free offer to join the NPAA is still available through October 16th. All right? If you join the NPAA, you get all that stuff that's on the screen right now. Some Sunline, some BFEs in BTL color, $20 gift card for apparel from Skeeter, Minn Kota, and Humminbird. And go back and listen to it. I had a lot of good feedback from it. The organization that a lot of people didn't even know existed. So
It's npaa.net.
Yeah.
And what is the discount code?
when you go to check out, you put in the code BTL20. BTL20 will get you all that stuff when you join.
I feel like we've made it big time.
What do you mean?
Well, you listen to like Joe Rogan, and Meat Eater and stuff, and they're all like, put in the code and get a discount.
Yeah.
Well, we got our own discount code now.
All right, here's something else. One of the great sponsors that has been with us for a long time. This is week number 2 of what they have going on for their 45th anniversary. Today, this week, all right, this next week, the 20% off on all outboard gear is in effect.
For TH Marine.
For TH Marine. And you use the code.
Oh, we got another code?
Yeah, anniversary 20.
Oh, that's a universal code, though.
Yeah. So like jack plates, 20% off.
How many years have you've been married? Way more than 20 years, haven't you?
29.
29.
Yeah. So cool stuff going on over at TH Marine. Make sure you check that out if you're in need of some stuff for your outboard. And I think they're running this the entire month of October.
There you go.
So that's what the next week number 2 of the TH Marine anniversary sale going on there. Couple other things real quick. Dude, sad day. And when I was setting things up with Mark Menendez, I asked him, I said, man, are you a Van Halen fan? And we got into a little Van Halen discussion, but the passing of Eddie Van Halen. Now, you're in your mid-30s, right?
Correct.
Were you a Van Halen fan? Did you even know anything about Van Halen?
Yeah, it's been Rojas's entrance song for the past, well, back when he used to have
Is that the only
fish
thing you know
tournaments where he
about-
had entrances.
Is that the only thing that you know about Van Halen, though?
I know he was a heck of a guitar player, right? Like he was a
Yeah.
savant with a guitar.
And it was incredible. And me and Mark were talking about how iconic that there were certain bands in the 80s and 90s that there's albums that come out. People don't even use the word, oh, we've got an album coming
I mean,
out.
he did the hair thing. He had the flow, like the
Well, they all
the
did.
poofy flow. But wasn't he like one of the well known for that? I mean, yeah, he's an icon in the guitar and classic rock. Not classic rock. What was it called back then?
I was just rock.
In the rock
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. So passed at the age of 65, and Mark and I both agree it's pretty unbelievable that so many people from that era are still alive, still kicking, and still going big time. The other thing is, and this is, I don't know if you may have heard this during your windshield time, unless you were listening to other stuff. You know, they started Saturday Night Live back up in New York, and this past week was the first week. They are paying people to be in the audience because that's the only way that they can get away with it, because they are employees, so they're able to do that. That's how they had a certain number of audience members at the comeback, the first one since the whole COVID-19 situation. So their musical guests, once again, they're doing the same thing. All right, they're paying people because that's how they get away with it. I am not familiar with this dude. Some up-and-comer, what is it called? Country. It's not country and western now. What is it called?
What's
Just
his
country?
name? Yeah.
Dude, I don't even remember. You're going to have to look it up. Anyway, there were photos and videos of this guy partying at, I believe it was the Texas A&M game. It might have been the Texas Tech game. I don't know. Some college football game, of which he was not using his best decisions in socializing with people. Let's just say that. Well, you know how strict New York is.
Did they make him quarantine?
So he's done. He's not going to be on the show. And this was going to be his big break to be on Saturday Night Live when a lot of people are watching. And yeah. And then the apology that he made when he came out. The dude didn't realize that.
Morgan Wallen?
You ever heard of him?
I think it sounds familiar.
I guess he's supposed to be the next
Well, he's
Garth
got a
Brooks or
hell
whatever.
of a mullet.
Does he?
Hell of a mullet.
Anyway, yeah, the dude was out partying with some co-eds and a bunch of other people, man.
You just do the photos and he's got cut off flannel belt buckles and a mullet.
I don't get it. It is what it is. But the dude just probably ruined his career and ruined his big
We're talking
opportunity.
about him. We wouldn't have been talking about him if he hadn't done dumb stuff.
I guess so.
Anyway,
Yeah.
are we ready to talk about some fishing?
Yes. All right. And then the, let's see here. The last thing, you're gone for 2 weeks, correct?
Yes.
All right. So what I want to do, folks, it was a really, really good show. Now, we have some folks that are going to join the watch party here as soon as we come back from break. But one of the better shows, and one of the shows that we got an enormous amount of feedback, was when we had 3 fans on. And we just talked. We talked about stuff that was going on in the fishing industry. We talked about, everything that is associated with being an angler and a fan from outside of the organizations. We're going to do that again when Matt's gone. We won't do it next week because the focus is obviously on the U.S. Open. But if you are interested in being a part of the BTL fan panel, shoot me an email and we're going to get that set up. We may do 2 of those shows during that week that you're gone.
There you go.
All right. So, folks, if you have any interest in that, please shoot me an email, mark@basszone.com, and I will be in touch. And it is great to hear the opinions and really what the fans think about stuff that's going on in the bass fishing world. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick break.
Cliff Perch has to be a tad salty. No U.S. Open, prime elk hunting season,
Yeah.
and he's got to go fish Santee and Guntersville and Chick in fall.
Yeah, probably so. All right, hang with us. We'll be right back after these very short breaks. Everybody stay tuned.
The ultimate fishing system starts with Lowrance HDS Live. The best fish finding tools, from chirp sonar and fish reveal to side scan and down scan imaging, and complete touchscreen control from your trolling motor to your big motor.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
Kevin, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just filling in for Billy.
I need a 660 shad crankbaits in the Series 5 model.
We're out.
You're not out. You got all kinds of them right there.
We're out.
Kevin, I need 6.
Have a lollipop.
I do not want a lollipop.
Have a lollipop.
Do you have it in sexy shad color?
Let's face it, fishing electronics are no longer an afterthought. They've become a necessity. And at the Bass Tank, our experts match you with the right electronics, provide professional installation, and educate you to help maximize your catching results while providing support along the way. Because let's be honest, it's about catching, not just fishing. And when you're ready for better results, join the Bass Tank team. Visit us today on Facebook or go to thebasstank.com.
Hey everybody, Tide Faircloth here. Want to show you one of my favorite braided lines, SX1 30-pound Sunline braid. I use this braided line for a couple of different applications, and one of my favorites to use for this line is a swim jig. Casts great, and it's small diameter, and just works really great on a swim jig. Another technique I like to use for 30-pound SX1 Sunline braid is whenever I'm flipping like a light, say an 1/8 to a 1/4 ounce weight in grass, small diameter, I don't lose much action on my worm, just works great in those scenarios. So if you're looking for a braided line for a swim jig or fishing a light Texas rig, check out Sunline's SX1 30-pound braid.
AFCO's new Yuri performance shirts are made out of a new fabric. Aeromesh technology, Aeromesh fabric, really breathable. You know, it just doesn't stick to you whenever you're sweating. It's 105 in Florida. You know, you got sun beating down, there's hardly any wind. You know, your shirt won't stick to your back or anything like that. Any little breeze gets through it, and all the AFCO features that you like with the hood, not without a hood, depending on which one you like. It's got odor technology, so your pits don't stink whenever you're sweating. It has thumb loops. So whenever you're driving down the lake, 70 miles an hour on a bass boat, you got the thumbs through here, sleeves won't roll up, so you have no excuse if you get sunburned. Any little breath of air gets through you and cools you down, so make sure you check them out. Any fish, any water, any condition, AFCO has you covered.
All right, we are back here on a Thursday, the BTL Watch Party. It is time to bring in our host. All right, let me see if I can get this queued up, Matthew.
You got like 6 people on the screen there.
Yeah, hang on here.
It's easier than the old stuff still.
Yeah. Mark, you there, man?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right, man. Once again, thank you so much for taking time out. I know the fans appreciate this, and little tough tournament this week, man.
Well, it's probably going to be one that you're going to be a gatherer and a hunter and trying to find one about every hour and a half would be a good rate, Mark, if you could catch a good one about every hour and a half. But I think we're going to see a little bit better fish catching than what was anticipated with this event, just by what I'm seeing on Bass Track so far.
All right, so far what you've watched, the action coming off of Bassmaster Live, what are your thoughts?
Well, here's the kicker on this whole lake, and it's all about a kicker. There are so many 5 to 7 to 8 pound fish in this lake. One or two of those is going to push you to a 20-pound bag pretty easy. So we're going to see that. The guys that can replicate that bigger bite are definitely going to have a huge advantage this week.
All right, let's bring in our guests that are going to take part in the party there. There we have Jason in Kentucky. How you doing, Jason?
Doing well. How about you guys?
All right, doing good. Let's bring in Matt from Minnesota. Matt, how are you?
Doing well, guys.
All right, and then let's bring in John. John, how are you, man?
Good morning.
You got this dialed in, Mark.
I'm
well,
trying,
this is my
man.
first one with this many guests. This is impressive right here. You just bam, bam,
I know.
bam. Just bringing them in.
I'm trying. All right, guys. Obviously, the beauty of this is you're able to ask Mark questions as we go to the action. We're getting ready to go to the action. I have one question off the bat, though, and I kind of talked a little bit to Mark about it prior to the show, and I do want to get into it because it seems to be something that the general angler, the tournament angler, the weekend guy talks about all the time. The morning bite. Mark, why are we not seeing the morning bite? What are the characteristics about the morning bite that are so critical to having a morning bite? What are they?
Well, one of the things is water clarity. Water clarity makes that morning bite on an upper highland reservoir like a Bull Shoals or a Table Rock or something like that with clean water of the utmost importance. Secondary to that, at this particular venue, you've got so much flat water. It's hard to find an edge. I mean, look, there's an ocean behind Patrick right there. He caught him a pound and a half and he's going nuts.
Yeah.
That morning bite is a little different here in that they're going to be fishing some isolated targets with a lot of cypress, and it's a midday bite in which the shade of those cypress trees creates an opportunity for the bass to get positioned to make them more catchable than they do in the morning. So I think we're going to see a stronger midday bite. That would be my first thought.
All right. Anybody have a question? We go to the action via Bassmaster.com. And once again, I want to thank Bass, Bruce Aiken, and Jim Sexton for allowing us to do this. You're not missing any of the action. This is your opportunity to ask Mark any questions about some of the stuff that we're seeing. You guys have any questions?
I got a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark, we hear a lot talked about this lake about the fishing the cypress trees. Is it safe to assume there's no current back in the areas where the cypress trees are? And if not, what positions the fish on the cypress trees?
Well, you do have areas in which there's very little current. The swamp at the upper end of the upper lake that Mark and Matt were talking about earlier is out of the current. There's no current there. So in that scenario, it's going to be looking in the vast fields of cypress and finding something different, either a giant cypress tree or a malformed cypress tree, or what I really try to find is a piece of horizontal cover, a laying down piece of wood. That's the big key. But up the lake, out in the main lake, this is a shallow lake, guys. I mean, it's the average depth of it is only 5 or 6 feet in most places. You have cypress on the main river channel, and in those areas, you're going to have some current that you can play with. That's actual current that's moving from the river. The bays, as you can see where Bob Downey's fishing right there, a little bit of wind would certainly cause a little water movement there, and those cypress trees will then begin to be players in breaking a little bit of current. So in the backwaters, wind's always going to be a help. Out on the main lake, those main river channel cypress are going to have current on them as well. This place is huge, guys. It is almost 200,000 acres between the two lakes. And it's just unbelievable, mind-blowing how big this place is.
Talk about the first time you went there, Mark, and how intimidating it was and how you decided to break this down. We've heard a lot of the guys, this is their first time. I mean, there's a lot of young guys on the Elite Series who haven't been here before, let alone this time of the year. But how did you break it down and how did you wrap your mind around it so you weren't so intimidated the first time you went to this fishery?
Well, Matthew, when I ran out of Tawkaw Creek where they're fishing out of John C. Landing, I stopped the boat when I got in the boat channel and I went, holy moly, look at Patrick on the right and that big horizon. And you throw timber in this place. The water's actually up a little bit for this tournament, so there's timber everywhere. And then I had a little draw-up factor when I saw all that timber and saw how hard it was going to be to get around. I immediately turned my boat and went up the river where that was the only place I could start breaking it down and getting into an area. In the spring, the fish are going to be shallow and spawning, so you can run some of those upper coves on the lower lake and know you're around some bedding fish. But right now, the fish are dispersed all over both lakes, so it is really, really hard. You have to get in an area and pick an area and stay in an area to be the most efficient. It is overwhelming how big this place is.
All right, I should mention this, too. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and you can see the struggles that Bass is having right now with the cell service. There's not too many cell towers around this lake. You get in certain areas of this lake. They are in for a challenge the entire week to cover this thing via live because the cell service just isn't there. Hence, that's why we're seeing some of the, little grainy kind of tough photos there, tough video.
Bob hooked up on an isolated cypress tree. If you're watching Bass Track right now, you're seeing that almost half the field's already caught one and reported a fish catch. And if you look at that, you're seeing some differentiation between the anglers with 1 or 2, 3 fish. There's already some 6-pounders showing up. So 2 6-pounders and 3 of those little guys right there, and you're right there with 17, 18 pounds. So he's in good shape with that one right there. It'll go in a live well. But it's that better quality. Get in an area and where deeper lakes, you have schools of fish. These fish get in areas because it's so flat. So you find one of those areas where they're rocking and rolling and there's a lot of fish in one area, you can really, really come on with some good weight.
I was nervous for Bob there. That's not a good feeling. You got some audio.
No, hang on. Yeah, I gotta mute that. There we go. John, you might want to reconnect because there's some audio issues with your connection there. Headsets work great. Headsets take care of all the feedback. Then you don't need to worry about that. So I have you muted right now. Mark, question on the instant feedback. Binkwood wants to know, do you think the lake is going through the turnover phase right now?
Well, it's cooling down at night, and a shallow reservoir like this doesn't really turn over in most areas because it's so darn shallow. Right there, Rob Dye's probably in about 3 feet of water moving over to the next tree, and you don't get that turnover so much. What's probably happening is, as I do know, there's a lot of incoming water from the upper end of the upper lake, and you're getting a lot of dirtier water coming through the midsection on that upper lake with the amount of rain they've had on the eastern quadrant from some of these big storms. So it's still a little bit of that. A turnover on this shallow lake, it may be happening, but I don't think it will affect the outcome of the event much.
Matt, question?
Yeah. Morning, guys. Mark, thanks a lot for doing this. I'm a muskie angler by trade from Minnesota, and my 7-year-old decided that he wanted to become a bass fisherman, and so I've switched over a little bit, and BTL has been able to at least not embarrass me at our local tournaments in front of my son, which has been good. But a couple questions. So I've never been down south and fished any of these areas the last couple of weeks. What are some of the biggest adjustments that these guys are having to make, whether it's, you talked about the size, but, mentally, or what they're going to be throwing, or what are some of the biggest adjustments from last week to this week?
Well, so the first thing I want to know, is your son adopted? Because if you're a muskie fisherman and he's a bass fisherman, he must be an adopted child.
It's a slow progression. He'll get there. Don't worry about it.
To get him to those alpha predators, I got you. Well, in the fall in the Southeast, Matt, it is a grind. It is fishing. We can have some great days when conditions get just right, but on the general usual with the high blue skies that we get here in the fall as the fronts move through, it's tough to catch 5. So that mindset, that put your mind in a box and realize that you're only going to get 5 to 7 bites a day, or even maybe 3 to 5 bites a day. You have to be 100% ready and 100% efficient. You cannot miss a fish. So when you miss a fish and it happens to be a 3 or a 4 pounder, you just realize you lost 20% of your creel. That's a tough way to look at it. The other thing you have to do is you have to mix. You have to be willing to mix either multiple patterns or multiple baits. And a bait is not a pattern. So we get a lot of what we call junk fishing down here in the South, going down a bank and there's a lay down tree and you pick up something to flip. Between the next target, which is a boat dock up there, there's a couple of pieces of grass or whatever it is, and you pick up a spinnerbait. You have to be willing not to lock something completely in your hand and solely only want to catch them on one bait. So you have to be very versatile and very open in how you look at what's in front of you.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up. So fall fishing in Minnesota is my favorite time of year, whether it's muskies or walleyes, or now I'm figuring out how to catch bass. But, that's been our awesome time of the year. So what makes it different down south where it seems tougher, where in Minnesota, fall fishing is some of the best time for us to be out catching bigger and more fish?
Well, you guys have a change in season that happens relatively quick. Couple 3 weeks, you go from sweating out there profusely to having to wear hoodies and long johns and things. And here in the South, that transition is a much longer, smoother transition. So the fish move to those wintertime patterns in a much slower rate. There's somebody in this event going to catch them out in 15 to 20 feet of water on this lake, on the river channel. And then there's some guys that are going to catch them ankle deep. So that's why we have such a vast population that is all over the place here, just because the transition from pure summer to pure winter takes so much longer.
Jason.
Thank you.
Any questions, Jason?
I don't think a whole lot. I think another thing to add there, at least, I've been fishing Cumberland a lot the last couple weeks, and it's not just different baits and, different patterns, but also even different species. And that's not obviously applicable on Santee Cooper, but, sometimes when you're in different lakes like that, on Cumberland, you can catch a lot of spotted bass, and sometimes you need a couple of those to fill out your limit.
So, Mark, how does a guy like Carl Jacobson, he's on the board now. He's got 4 for 19. He's got a 5, a 3, a 4, and a 7. I mean, he's obviously figured something out early on here that no one else has figured out. Is Santee a place that you can get something on your own and find something that's a little different that maybe the rest of the field doesn't pick up? Or are there a lot of guys probably doing the same thing that he's doing?
Well, Carl has put into his arsenal some big baits, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if Carl's not throwing the glider, the old gliding jerk bait, or he's using a very large jig. Carl's not afraid to go singularly look for those bigger fish. And like I said, he may run out there today and catch 20, 25 pounds, and then tomorrow those bigger fish become a thing of the past. But he's gambling on the first morning, and he's doing very well catching that bigger fish. I bet you he's either one of two things, using a larger bait presentation, or he's in an area, say the swamp or something like that, where he's in a relatively smaller area that has a better population of big fish. It doesn't look like he's lighting it up with numbers, but the fish he's catching are the right ones. So that is a complete strategy in this event, as well as next week will be too.
We got John's audio fixed.
I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to unmute him. No, he's got his muted.
He's got his muted?
Yeah.
He's got to unmute his, and then John can get in on it. There. Oh, you had it. Now you just muted him. Now we're unmuted. We got you, John?
I just figured out the problem.
Okay. Have at it. Got any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. He's good to go.
Right.
But Mark, he could
good.
fish the way he's fishing, the way you just described it. He could be on the mother lode and never see another competitor out there. I mean, there's only less than 100 of these guys out here.
Absolutely. That's the great thing about fishing on a giant lake like this. You can get an area to yourself with this smaller field, and that's what I love fishing about the Elite Series, is the tournaments that I've won in the past, I have always had something special. I've always had an area that I had basically to myself. And you can do this on this body of water. There is no doubt about that. Those bigger fish are very finicky here, and with this oncoming change in weather that they're going to experience the last couple of days of the tournament, he could blow this thing out very easily in 2 days. When Preston Clark set the record, Matt, I had 53 pounds in 2 days and was in like 8th or 9th place after the second day. So I had a 30-pound day and a 23-pound day that I caught in like 15 minutes in specific areas that even on a spawning tournament, I had those fish all to myself. So this place is amazing. On the flip side of that, when we were there in 2009 for an open tournament, I had an area all to myself, and I caught a limit that weighed 7 pounds each day and was thrilled just to catch 7 pounds. So areas will be important.
Is this a deal? So you talk about you talk about the fall turnover. We saw, I think, was it Rob Dye, some guys starting on like railroad bridges. We've seen some guys that are fishing next to bridges. We watched at Gunnersville, the guys that were fishing bridges. I think Carl was doing that too in different areas. You're seeing in a lot of the YouTube, you can see where guys fish a lot now, right? Like Polinick was fishing bridges. So we'll just, while they're getting back into this, is the fall time of the year on these fisheries. I've got this theory called BMR squared: bridges, marinas, riprap, and ramps. And it seems like you're seeing a lot of the guys hit these high percentage areas that have a population of fish that serve as a throughway or a causeway, that have a pinch point, that always have bait, and that a lot of time have release fish. And you're seeing them fish them with finesse and high percentage baits, just trying to get 5 in the boat. I mean, do you kind of follow that theory in the fall too, as far as you're going out to try to figure out how to catch a limit and go from there, as opposed to, I guess, doing what Carl's doing now, which is just catch 5 donkeys?
Well, absolutely. And you said the key word, pinch point. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a causeway like you just saw on the footage on the screen there of Interstate 95 there. I look for places that are natural pinch points, and they tend to get less pressure. Those could be 2 points of reeds that come out in the back of a bay. That could be 2 land masses that come together. That could be an island with a shoal on it. All of those things. It's about percentages. And in the fall, with the fish so scattered, if I can put myself in places that the percentage is higher, I'm fishing for more fish during the day. Are they the biggest fish in the lake? Maybe, maybe they're not. But doggone it, Matt, you know, in your next tournament next week when you start, you're going to be praying for 5. Toledo Bend's a giant lake. You're going to have to put yourself in some areas in which percentages are higher. And whether that is a causeway, whether that is a marina, because there is so much life always around those docks in a marina, or even if they are retreads, percentages play big now, as they always do, but it's just more evident in the fall.
All right, let's see if we can pick up the audio from Davey Height here.
In practice, and we talked about that, but had a few big bites. And some of these guys, I just saw Drew Cook go by. You know, I talked to him. He had, you know, a good many bites. But I think a lot of these anglers wanted to get 3, 4, maybe even the 5 fish limit in the boat before they go to an area where they've had some of those bigger bites, which is smart. But I don't know if someone that tries to play it safe like that will be able to win. I think the person that wins will be someone that just fishes for those 5 bites and someone that's able to do that. We'll also see some people that'll probably stumble because they try to do that and really roll the dice a little harder.
Davey, looking at our Humminbird lay of the lake, obviously Lake Marion has the majority of the field. Tell the folks at home this time of year, not spring, not March and April, the difference in Marion and Moultrie this time of year and why it's so dominated right now with anglers in Marion compared to mulch?
Well, typically, most of these fisheries, most of these man-made reservoirs, the fishing is better upstream in the following year. We saw that last week with Frank Talley and some of those anglers. Carp Willet transitioned to fishing a little more up there. And okay.
All right. They have lost it. I'm telling you, folks, it is going to be a challenge this week with the live coverage, just simply because of the number of cell towers that just can't handle that much data coming through them. So
How much more likely are you to not take risks knowing you don't got a cell phone, Mark? Like, I mean, there's got to be fisheries where you're like, oh, let's run back at this cypress thing. But if I'm here, I'm waiting for a airboat or a gator hunter to come by before I get out. It's not like you could just call up one of your buddies and say, hey, come tow me out.
Well, see, that's the deal, Matt. You grew up in the age of technology. All I had was a map and a little red light that went round and round and round as being a flasher. So you're talking about your GPS. There are times, and in lakes like this where mapping may or may not be good, you have to use a little common sense. So you can't go rip-roaring in through there in your brand new boat. You have to kind of feel your way through. And this is one of those tournaments where you may see that. That boat in the background that's running right there, I can't tell if he's in a channel or not, but this place is an absolute minefield. Well, fortunately, the water is up, so getting around will be a little bit easier. But if the water's down, you have to really be crafty in how you move around. So, yes, I would be a heck of a lot more conservative on how I moved around, spending a lot of time idling, a lot of time on the trolling motor, and a lot less time fishing, just trying to get to secluded areas.
Matt, Jason, John, any questions? Matt's got one.
Yeah, so it's not actually a question, but you guys said you need to fill some time, and so I got a really quick story I'll touch base on. I told you guys about my 7-year-old, my son, who really wanted to get into bass fishing, and so I had to put the musky rod down and figure out how to run smaller rods and smaller reels and not backlash every time I was pitching a dock. But long story short is we started fishing some local tournaments, and I was totally spun out on the first one. He was actually the calm kid, and he caught our 2 biggest fish, had a blast, and we ended up now fast forward a couple of weeks, and we're on a local lake, and we end up catching a big kicker fish. We go to the weigh-in, and we end up winning big bass, and we end up winning the tournament. And so the proceeds are like $160, and so I make him pitch in $1 every time we buy in. So I split him in, and the next morning, after all the excitement had gone through, and I'm handing him his cash and we're having a good time talking about it, I asked him, hey, if you could go do your normal chore and unload the dishwasher, and I'll give you $1 if you go do that. And he looked at me as serious as possible. He's like, Dad, why would I do that? I make money bass fishing. So I've created a total monster. I don't think he's ever going to get a real job. Thought I'd share that with you guys.
Wow. Awesome. That's a great story.
Start getting ready for college fishing is all I can tell you. Get him in college, get him fishing, and he'll get a lot more experience fast.
So what do you think he's fishing right here as we look at this shot? A stump? What's going on there? Brush piles? What do you think, Mark?
I'd say it's a grass line. Where he's sitting on the upper lake in the mouth of the diversion canal. And there's some hard bottom there where the current has continually washed off the edge there. It's fishing,
oh, goodness gracious.
There. So I bet there's some grass there or a very hard bottom, a shell bottom or something like that.
He's hung up in it. Is he hung up? No, it looks like he was hung up. He just got it free. Don't freeze on us now, Patrick.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, come on. I give him props. They're in the middle of nowhere.
You really get to Santee. You have to go so many different ways just to get there. And he did.
Well, that was rather anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
It was.
It's like a skinny pound and a halfer. Did that not look like he had hooked an alligator?
Yeah.
He's going to cull him out there, a little bitty guy, so that'll move him up. The one thing about Patrick is local, so Patrick knows where he's in those high percentage areas, and this is kind of a natural pinch point on the mouth of that canal. So he's fishing that high percentage area. He's probably going to play this one a little bit safe for a while. He's got 5, get him 10, 12, 14 pounds, and then watch him go swing to catch 1 or 2 more fish, and he's got 18 all of a sudden. So Patrick has a huge advantage just on the fact that he knows how to get around on this lake. That's a big deal. You know, a couple of other guys, now he's picking up a big bait right there. Looks like a big spoon. So he's looking to catch that big fish now. A couple other guys you better watch. You better watch Todd Otten. Todd knows this place pretty well. Shane Lineberger has spent a lot of time here, and so has Hank Cherry. So even though they're North Carolina anglers, they fish quite a bit.
Let me ask you this. You've won several times and then had tournaments the next week or the week after that. I want to go back to like a Frank the Tank, Frank Talley, who wins, gets his first big win. You know, he posted, "Hey, I'm trying to practice. I'm trying to get back to all the people. I appreciate the love. I'm trying to get ready for the next tournament." When you're in that situation and you're not a guy like Kevin who's won 25 times and it's just business as usual the next week, I mean, what is it like when you get one of those first couple wins? You've got a tournament the next week. You've got all the sponsor obligations that week. Does the momentum help you and you just roll in full of confidence? Do you feel overwhelmed and then your practice and the next tournament is kind of hard for you to take? I'm talking about these back-to-back deals. What do you think his mindset is? I mean, he's got 3 for 7.5 pounds now, so I mean, he's hanging in there. But just from your experience, easier or tougher to back up a win with a tournament the next week?
Well, you know, there's a statistic that was on Bass not long ago, maybe a year or 2 ago, on guys that had just exactly what you said, have won an event and they go to the next week. And there's only been about 3 or 4 of us that have backed that up back to back with another top 10. I'm lucky enough to be one of those guys. I did that after I won Dardanelle. I went to Lake Wheeler, which is a lake I know very well, and finished in the top 10. So the good thing about it, Matt, what you're thinking about the most is the financial pressure is gone. This is the 3rd year Frank has basically fished as a pro angler. He's got $100,000 in his pocket. He does not have to worry about paying the light bill next week. He will then take that and relax, and a new angler will come out of you with that extra cash in your pocket, and your thought process becomes a total different thing. When you hit that good lick, it releases a lot of those pressures, those financial pressures and those worries. Am I doing the right thing? Do I have to get a check? Man, I've got to get that $10,000 check. I got to get one more limit. You don't worry about it. You start fishing for big ones and you roll with it, and it becomes a heck of a lot more fun than it was before you won that event.
That's a big chunk right there that he's targeting. Bob Downey on the right there.
What kind of grass is that? Is that?
Looks like some hyacinths, Matt. Big floating mat of hyacinths, probably hooked to the bottom with either milfoil or hydrilla right there, holding it in place. It could even be a cypress stump holding in place.
So those are floating. Those are floating mats. The hyacinth. They're not connected to the bottom. They just roam around the lake like they have their own mind. And then whether it's current or wind, whatever blows them into there, then they stick there.
Absolutely. They get hung on something and they create an umbrella. And those big fish swim around in that shallow, flat water, get under them, and there you go.
Have you ever caught one on a moving hyacinth mat? Like, will the fish follow like a big hyacinth mat?
I watched Cliff Print catch a whole
It's a valid question, is it not?
I watched Cliff Print catch 15 pounds at Dardanelle on a mat that was floating out because there was a shad spawn going around that mat. It had a whole school of bass under it. He caught every darn one of them right there in front of me. It was the most amazing thing you've ever seen.
So it was like the saltwater deal where you find like a floating piece of wood and you've got the mahi and the triple tail and the whole stuff around it. So he did that on Dardanelle. Was he punching? Please tell me he was punching it.
He was winding a plug around it. He was winding a plug around it and lit them up.
Wow. That's really hard to duplicate the next day, though, because you don't know where that mat's going to be.
The mat floated out to the main lake, and he was done. He had to go back to flipping after that.
That's a good point. All right. Anybody out there have any questions? Looks like Jason does. Do I have him muted?
Yeah, you got them all muted right now.
Well.
Oh, for the feedback.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, Mark, I just had a question about shade because I noticed earlier this morning they were talking with several of those guys and they were saying that when the shade sets on those cypress knees a little later in the day, I was just wondering in general, obviously the shade is really big in the summer. As the water starts to cool down, are those shady banks still play as much as they do during the summer, or do some of the sunny banks
The
start
sunny
playing?
banks will start playing later in the year. Once we start getting down below 50 degrees, they'll need a little bit warmer water there. But right now in the fall, fishing shade lines, fishing shade of boat docks, fishing shade of cypress trees. Shade is something that I run even on lakes like Cumberland. I will still run shallow water looking for whatever shaded objects I can find. It's a great pattern this time of year. And it can be main lake shade, it can be middle of the bay shade, and it can be even back in the far end reaches of the bay. So it's with those fish scattered, shade is a big deal. I mean, they don't have sunglasses on, so they've got to find something to cover their eyes, and that's what they'll do.
Matt, Mark's taking care of some business right there. We'll get to Matt in a second. So you mentioned the shade, and one of the things with the cypress is the cypress also create shade with the knees. In your opinion, what makes a good cypress tree angler? Because you watch a lot of these guys who fish cypress and you talk about it, and a lot of the guys there's an art to fishing cypress trees, is there not?
Well, there certainly is, and there's millions of these cypress trees on this lake. When you look at it, and it looks like the darn needle in the haystack, Matt. I mean, it's crazy how many are there. So you have to start looking for cypress trees that are something different. Those isolated cypress trees that may be next to 3.5 feet of water instead of 2.5 feet of water, where there's a little bit of a drop there, a little bit deeper water. Anytime I can find a piece of horizontal cover next to one, that's one I'm going to mark and I'm going to come back to. You've got to have something there that's a little bit different, be it a mat, be it a piece of wood, whatever it is. Then size of the cypress tree. You have to look at the size. If it's a relatively small one, you know that root system is not going to be as big and the strike zone becomes much smaller. So on those bigger trees, I may take 5 to 10 casts to pitch all the way around and make sure I cover that area. So all of those things have to be taken into account.
So you can fish cypress trees just like a pattern, like you can fish docks on Lake of the Ozarks or Grand Lake once you kind of comprehend what you're looking at, and it doesn't look like a forest, just like you hear these guys from Florida look at Grand and be like, well, how do you know which docks? You can get that dialed in on the cypress to where you're fishing a pattern within a forest.
You definitely can. And in the swamp, that famous area up on the north end of the upper lake, definite trends start to emerge. And you have to be very observant because it's very subtle most of the time. But you have to be very observant from every bite you get, and you can start multiplying your effect on your fishing by watching where they come from.
Was that your financial advisor?
Hang on. No. That was my doctor.
Oh.
Okay. And I didn't talk about Mark. Obviously, you know the whole back issue and stuff going on with the back. So I went to see a anesthesiologist on.
Is he calling you back?
Yeah.
I feel something vibrating.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's telemarketing. Anyway, I went and I saw this guy who deals in all kinds of other stuff that is related to orthopedics. I mean, yeah, he's an anesthesiologist, but he's like pain management stuff, but he does it with procedures that you're probably aware of. I was not aware of it. Anyway, what he's going to do is he's going to do 2 injections in my spine with steroids. Have you had that done?
No, I have not had that done. I've been very fortunate with my back injury, and I haven't had to get internal with anything just yet. But that steroid, what he's going to do is reduce the inflammation in certain points to calm that area down. So you should receive some pretty good time period, long-lasting relief from that. So
that's going to make you angry?
Yeah, no, that's what he said.
It's not going to make you angry.
I just think it's bizarre. No.
It's going to make him hungry, Matt. He's going to get.
It's going to make him angry and his temper.
Now, I have some major arthritis in my spine. Is basically what's causing the inflammation, which is making the nerves upset, which is causing me all of my pain as a result of the MRI and all. Anyway, so
Matt had a question.
I did not want to miss that call because my procedure is now scheduled for next week. So I apologize, folks. Matt has a question.
Yeah.
Matt, do you ever get does it ever get a little annoying listening to Mark talk about all of his back problems and his teeth that he's getting pulled and all that stuff all the time?
No, I got to hand it. I mean, the guys, you're 57.
Yeah.
You're 6'4". You played college baseball, basketball coach, professional bowler. You sat at a desk for 25 years.
Played hockey, too.
Well, if you want to call
Not
it
at
that.
your level.
If you want to call it that.
It was men's
glided
league.
around out there in
Yeah.
men's league. But no, I mean, he's actually in pretty dang good health. And then throw in the fact that that you've got what do you have? MS?
Yeah.
That he's got MS. So he wants to talk about his health. That's what old guys do.
That's what we do, man.
Talk about their health. So, Mark, but seriously on that, I mean, you've got Fritz out there. You've got Rick Clunn. We'll even throw Jay Yellis into that category. You've got these guys in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, back-to-back-to-back weeks, giant fisheries, long runs, coming off of back-to-back-to-back northern swings on giant fisheries up there with rough water. What shape are these guys' bodies in at this point of the year? And are there guys who are making decisions based on what they think their body can handle? I mean, obviously, I don't see like a Seth Feider or Polinick doing that, but there's a percentage of the field that, I mean, they've got to be feeling it right now.
Well, I'm certain they are. I spoke with Matt Herron. Matt has a shoulder injury right now. And Matt, when you shake his hand, it's like a concrete rock. Matt's in great shape. Rick Clunn he's in unbelievable physical shape. Now Fritz, on the other hand, he makes so many pumpkin pies. I'm gonna throw a little cloud of doubt on David. But David's style of fishing is not really that strenuous in that he generally does extremely well on structure fishing where he can sit down and fish. You have to, it's a marathon and you have to prepare yourself. You have to be in good shape and you have to really just pace yourself during these long, grueling tournament stretches. A young man like Bob Downey, he can fish like a wild man from daylight to dark. I can't do it. I have to break off at about 5 o'clock in the evening and go rest. Can't do it anymore. Elbows, back, and hands just can't take it. So pacing oneself is very, very important. And Clunn's going to fish till he's 90 years old. Rick is in such good shape. I'm a little bit jealous that he's in that good a shape.
Wow.
Didn't I ask you that off air yesterday?
What's that?
I was like, you were talking about the back, and I was like, is it impressive to you?
It is.
What Rick's and Mark was just like, dude, like, it's crazy impressive on what those guys could do. I mean, you still have a lot of guys in their 70s fishing tournaments, effectively winning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I have a question, Mark. We got a peek at what Downey was using. All right. And this time of the year, when the condition gets tough, a lot of people say, well, you need to downsize. What is the truth to that? And should these guys downsize their baits when the bite gets tough?
Well, he's basically just using a smaller lure to get through the cover that he's fishing. He's using a regular size lure there. He's got a big sinker and he's punching it through. You know, in those clear water situations, you're looking at Bernie flip one in the boat, and he's got a spinning rod in his hand. In that clear water situation, downsizing is a lot more important. Downsizing here on Santee to me is going from a 11-inch worm to a 6-inch finesse worm, a perfect plastic worm. That's downsizing to me on lakes like this where such big fish still live in this place. So cleaner water, yeah, you can downsize to a Ned rig to 6-pound, 8-pound line. You know, Patrick's supposed to be using a little bit of finesse with that Tokyo rig as well, but downsizing tends to be just a little bit smaller in dirty water areas, just a smaller change than a magnificent change from a big bait to a little Ned rig or something like that in clean water.
All right. So is that a winning practice, say, across the country? I know you mentioned the clear water, but is that the standard when fall gets around? Is it better to downsize when the bite gets tough?
It's going to get you 5. It very seldom gets you that 4-pounder that you need.
Yeah.
But in these real tough tournaments where you don't have giant fish in the lake, getting 5 is such a major deal sometimes Doggone, I'm gonna try to get 5, and then I'll risk the rest of it of catching that bigger fish. So it's about getting that check for a lot of these guys. These are young guys that the finances could be tough right now after a long season like we've had. But they're trying to make that $10,000 check to get on the chick where they can fish a little freer.
All right. Let's see here. Matt has a question. Let me unmute him. Okay, you're good, Matt.
All right, I'm at. All right. Well, Jeffries, I don't mean to poke at you and poke fun at you too much. So hopefully that wasn't too bad.
No, I'm used to it, man.
But so we had talked, or I guess you guys had talked about the difference between a shallow fisherman learning how to fish deeper or a deeper fisherman fishing shallower, and which is more difficult. What would you say, kind of along the same lines of a northern fisherman coming south versus a southern fisherman coming north? What would you say is the more difficult transition to make?
I would say the northern fishermen coming south would be probably better equipped. You all always have a population of fish that stay shallow up north year round. You have the opportunities to get out off of weed lines and long points in some of those lakes up there that I fished in your state. That makes you a very a good offshore fisherman. I think this southern guy that fishes shallow all the time that ends up having to fish 25 to 35 feet deep sometimes, that's a little more difficult than you migrating south.
Thanks.
Is this the point of the year where you get your guys, let's say Wes Logan and Paquette and Yellis, Dowdy, Pipkins? I mean, they're in the 38th to 42nd place right there. Are you making decisions based on where you are in the Angler of the Year, knowing that the top 40 go to the Classic? Or is that an individual thing? Some guys don't look at it, some guys do.
Matt, if the guy tells you he doesn't look at the standings, he's a liar.
That's what I thought when Brandon was like winning Angler of the Year. I'm like, how are you not looking at the standings the entire year? Okay, but
now in that instance, Brandon may not have. Brandon knows that if he gets close to Angler of the Year, the Classic is done and over with.
Right, but cut line, the guys around the cut line are making decisions on how they think they can get every point.
Absolutely. Those guys right now on that cut line are crying for a 12-incher right now. They know that's 1 or 2 points that might get them in. You know, in an event like this, that could hurt you because if they catch them like they're going at the same pace this week, 9 pounds a day is not going to do very well for you. To make that jump at 40th place, you need a top 25. You need a top 15, actually, and a top 5 even makes it better. So the guys that fish with a freer, more open mind generally get out of that cut line and jump in the Classic a heck of a lot easier than the guy that's penny pinching and just trying to get in on anything he possibly can.
Because I'm trying to learn from this a little bit because a lot of guys are in that situation, whether it's make your state team or make your club championship or make the BFL regional, and it comes down to that last one. And of course, you're going to have 3 days of practice, and you're going to have something where you catch a couple 4-pounders, and you're going to have something where you catch 14-inchers. And I try to figure out what's the best way. Do you say, okay, I think I've got a 50% chance of catching 15 pounds, but I also have a 50% chance of zeroing or catching 1 or 2, but I think I've got an 80% chance of catching 10 pounds, so I'm mitigating my risk, but I only have a 5% chance of catching 15 pounds. So you start doing the percentages, and you have to figure out, is it worth playing it safe? How much risk are you willing to take? And I think that's where you talked a little bit about earlier is you probably have some guys who get a limit quicker than they thought, and then that allows them 5 or 6 hours to expand and kind of – have you found that in your tournament fishing on a tough fishery like Santee? I mean, are you going to go do some crazy stuff if you get 12 pounds in the box and you know that's good by 9 a.m. as opposed to grind it out till 2 to get it?
Absolutely. I am going to go and try to catch that better fish. Matt, you're talking to a guy that has missed the Classic being the first guy out 3 different times. And back in 2007 and 2008 by 1 point one year and 2 points the next. So it sucks to be the first guy out. I've made a career of that. So now I fish a lot freer. I know I mitigate risk in everything we do, but I'm trying to catch that better fish now. I spent a lot of time fishing a Strike King Rage Craw that is a great compromise lure. It is a compromise lure that it will catch a limit fish, and I have caught some absolute giants with that. So I may change my techniques and try to use baits that I've got that option to catch that big fish. Don't catch a lot of big fish on a finesse worm. Don't catch a lot. But on a flipping bait like that, I catch bigger fish. So I may do that. Yes, get me 5, get me started, even if it's a 6-pound limit. Then I'm going to take off and go fish for those bigger fish. So it's about lure choice and the percentages at that point. How many presentations can I make? How far do I have to run to do it? Absolutely, it's all about making that choice.
Wow, I don't know if they've talked about this on Bass Live, but we got our boy down there, Dave.
Yeah.
He said Carl's not by himself, not doing anything crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So he may be in an area, Matt, where they're just a better group of quality fish instead of a technique specific.
Is he on the lake?
I think so, yeah, taking photos. I mean, you can't get lucky and catch 4 giants when no one else has caught giants, can you? I mean, he's figured whether, you said, it's where it is in the grass or where it is on the cypress. You can't just stumble into 19 if there's a bunch of other guys in the area doing the same thing and they've caught 1 6-pounder and you're like, oh, there's another 6.
Yeah, he's in an area that's got a better group of fish in it right now. For his sake, I hope he's by himself and he can manage that area. If he catches one more, he better get out of there or go somewhere else and expand. A lot of times, Matt, once I get that 5 and I know it's good, I generally will either go to another area, either get it in the system or get it out of the system for the rest of the week. That cost me winning the St. John's event in 19. First day of the tournament, 11 o'clock, I don't have a fish. 12 o'clock, I've got 24 pounds. And I ran to the south end of Lake George to get myself to another area to either get it in for tomorrow's fishing or get it out of. When in all actuality, if I'd have got rid of one more 2-pounder, I win the tournament if I catch another 5. And I was definitely around those big ones. So it is a gamble, but I thought that was the best thing for me to do.
Ask him if we can call him. Are you texting with him?
Mm-hmm.
See if he's got a cell signal. Obviously, texting is work, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can get Dave.
He's working
on the phone. He's not working.
Yes, he is.
So what?
He's going to be upset. He wants to be shooting photos.
No. If he wants to come on, he'll come on.
I've got no response yet. I said, can we call you? That's what I thought. Gerald Swindle just made a jump into the top 10 early, but 4 for 9 pounds. I mean, this seems to be in his wheelhouse. Familiar with the fishery, 20 rods on the front deck, knows how to get it done, is in a position where he has to catch a decent limit throughout the rest of the year to make the Bassmaster Classic, coming off a really good Bassmaster Open where he had a top 10 on Rayburn. I mean, this, to me, was a Gerald Swindle type tournament.
I would definitely think so, Matt. Those guys that are willing to put 20 rods out there and go, they're going to do well in this event. They're going to do well in this event. Gerald always does well when it's a gathering type tournament.
Jason, you got a question?
Yeah. So I was wondering, Mark, let's say that there's a lake on the Elite Series you're going to. You don't have a whole lot of experience there. You know that there's an area of the lake that people oftentimes win on. How often are you going to spend a lot of your practice in that area of the lake, and how often are you going to go somewhere else kind of off the wall and see if you can find something? I mean, I'm thinking about like Aaron Martin's in the Chesapeake and even Welcher and, Tally in this last tournament fishing way up on, in the river.
Well, you do your research and you find areas that are consistent, and they're consistent through multiple tournaments. And community holes are community holes for a certain reason. They hold fish, or areas of the lake do the same thing. So yes, I'm going to go look at those areas. Am I going to rely on those areas? It'll probably be about a 60-40 if I know the majority of the population of the fish are there. Or a lake like you fish at Cumberland. Burnside's way the heck up that lake. Fishing Creek's only about 12 miles down the lake. I may run to Fishing Creek and look around to see if I can develop a pattern, full well knowing that Indian and Beaver is where I need to be.
Right.
Because bigger populations of fish live down there at that lower end. So you have to factor a lot of those in there. And then again, it's cost averaging. That's all bass fishing is. is cost averaging. Where can I get the biggest bang for my buck? Be it bigger than average fish or be it more fish, and then I'll run from there. I've done well on areas in which you never see boats. I was on a West Point tournament one time. We were in the spinnerbait in June in the South and blew the tournament away. Totally caught me off guard when that developed. Where you fish cover on that lake most of the time to do well. Every now and then it opens up to really, really stupid kind of fishing, and you win. When that all lines up, you win. It's hard to figure that out sometimes.
You got anything, John?
Matt. Did Matt have one?
Oh, did Matt? Yeah. Sorry. Hold on. John's talking too.
Hang on. Let's go with John first.
Go with John. Oh, there we go.
Hey, Mark, earlier you mentioned David Fritz. If David Fritz is out here today with a crankbait or a Carolina rig sitting on the front deck, is he likely in Marion or is he in Moultrie? And what's the difference in structure in the two?
Well, the problem with this lake is it's so flat and so big. The structure elements aren't that defined. I bet you if we could look at a map, you're going to find Fritz around the diversion canal because there's more definitive structure there. Kind of like where we saw Patrick. Fritz may be on the lower end in Moultrie. There's more structure on the lower end of that canal. And what I mean by structure is the bottom. It's the bottom contents, the way the bottom falls. Cover is an added bonus. We mix that up a lot as bass fishermen. Rick is throwing at cover there on our screen. That's not structure to me. That's cover. That tree is. But Fritz will be out there where the bottom has a different change, a more definitive change. And I promise you that's probably an area where he's at right now. Current, pinch point, and definitive structure. That's straight up David's alley.
Mark, can Fritz still win? Let me preface this though. The guy made his career on being able to pinpoint underwater cover and structure offshore using triangulation, a flasher, and an incredible feel to interpret what his bait is doing using his whole system. Now we have forward-facing sonar. We have 1 foot increments in the mapping. We have incredibly versatile anglers who are fishing offshore. A lot more. The education is there to where it's not as scary, to where you've got guys that can cover massive amounts of offshore stuff. It all seems to kind of stack up against a slow, methodical guy like Fritz, who kind of seems to rely on really picking stuff apart in the future. I mean, you seem to think that he still has the possibility to win a 4-day tournament fishing the way that he has fished and won before, though.
I really do if the tournament schedule would line up a little bit better. We fish more of a spawn and a smallmouth season anymore. This is where I really thought David would end up doing well on these last 3 events. And I think you will see David pick up some speed at Chick and at Lake 4. He can. Now, what has to happen, Matt, is the structure that he finds has to be, like you said, very pinpointed, where he can put that bill of that plug on the bottom and make that cast. He tried to do that at Guntersville the first day when he was on the camera the other day, and he was making one specific cast with a Carolina rig. When it lines up and fishing is very, very tough in a summer or fall situation, there's not a more dangerous angler than David Fritz fishing offshore.
Dave said he's more than willing to call in and give us an update, but he's at Chick-fil-A right now.
I thought you said he was on the water.
I thought he was too. He's taking a little break right now.
Well, those workers at Chick-fil-A, man, doing a mighty fine job. That is a machine.
My pleasure.
Especially the drive-through.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
All right.
Chick-fil-A.
Matt had a question.
Who did? Matt?
Yep.
All right. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, just a couple minutes ago while we were watching Rick Morris here on his right side of his boat, you could see almost like some bugs that were running around on top of the water. I don't know if you noticed that at all.
No, I did not see that. Those are probably just water beetles that float on the top of the water. Did it look like almost like a school of bait fish there? Was it a big amount of?
Does that play at all with, I mean, with the reason these fish are up in here and why he's fishing where he's at? Is it a bait thing? Is it a cover thing? You talked about that, or what specifically are bringing these fish into these areas?
Well, again, these fish live shallow year round. This is one of those lakes in which the majority of the fish population lives shallow. So this is a cover issue. You can see he's got these isolated trees out there. He's moving quickly, trying to be efficient with a wacky rig there, and he's looking for numbers like this. He's just pitching to outside trees at the ends of these little tree points that are sticking out there that may be either bigger, smaller, or have a little bit deeper water on them. Forage there are three basic things. You've got a shad population there, a big gizzard shad that big bass like to eat. You've got big crayfish that show up this time of year, and then the third forage are bluegill. So that's your main forage there in this particular lake for these fish that live shallow year round.
So would this be, when he's throwing a wacky rig like this versus a Texas rig or a jig, is there a reason that he's using that? Is it you talked about a numbers thing, or what would he be using a wacky rig versus some other type of bait around that cover?
That wacky rig, when they bite it, to catch most of them. So that's one of the reasons he's doing that wacky rig. And the wacky rig allows that bait to fall at a very slow speed and stay next to the base of that tree in the strike zone much longer. So it's a high percentage bait, and it stays in the strike zone.
Yep.
Okay, Jason. Hang on one sec here. Go ahead, Jason.
This isn't a question, but just a little history. Way back in the early 2000s, I actually fished a Junior Bassmaster Classic with Rick Morris.
Really?
And where was that?
Yep, throwing a spinnerbait on the Harris chain. It was like a massive. I was like so pumped to fish, Florida, because I'm from Indiana, and so like literally to qualify for the Junior Bassmaster Classic, I caught like one keeper at like 2:30 in the afternoon with like 5 minutes to go. I mean, so I was like all pumped to fish Florida, and there was like a massive cold front that came through, and didn't even get a bite the whole tournament. But I was fishing with Rick.
Do you remember what famous family's son won that tournament?
What?
Do you remember who won that tournament from a famous family?
Was that a Hibden?
Yes, it was. It was Peyton.
Very
Hibden
good.
won that tournament.
Yeah, I was thinking it was. Yeah, I couldn't remember for sure, but they won it fishing spinnerbaits, I think, in the grass, that was also the classic that Rick almost won.
That's right. He finished second in that event. I fished that event as well.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Was that
yeah?
That was 05 then?
It was the 06 Classic.
06.
One down at Toho and Kissimmee, and we moved up to the Harris Chain to fish with the kids.
Yep.
That's some good history.
That's very cool. All right, Mark, let me ask you this. As we look at the conditions that Rick is fishing right now, how mentally tough do you have to be with those slick conditions like that, and the bite as tough as it is? How mentally tough do you have to be to sit there and focus and concentrate on the task at hand?
You have to, because you're only fishing for a very limited amount of bites. Rick is a hard head. He is hard-headed. He gets something in his mind, and he will fish that and beat that horse to death. So he's very well versed at gathering five. He's been a journeyman for almost 30 years, over $1 million won. This fits perfectly into his style of fishing. I can't tell, he may be hooked up right there.
Yep, and it appears to be a jammer.
Wow.
So here's where it really
becomes
tough, Mark. He's got to land this fish. He knows it's a good one. It's a good one. That helps.
Yep.
He knows he's on the right track and he's moving up. So, like I said, Rick is very well adept at fishing for 5 bites.
Let me ask this real quick. So we watch what Rick is fishing there, and you had a good question with the wacky worm and why the wacky worm. Looking at what he's fishing, is this something that Rojas would be frogging, Hackney would be flipping a jig in, Kevin Short would be cranking a WEC crankbait in, and he's throwing a wacky worm in? I mean, is this where the guys pick their strengths on this and then roll with that?
Absolutely. I think that's part of it. I'm pulling it up on Bass Track. Let's see where Rick is now. how many fish he has. I don't find him. I don't see him. There he is. He's only got 3 in the boat right now. So he's going to do that till he gathers him 2 more, and then he'll gather on with something else to catch that bigger fish. That's where being that journeyman and fishing for those checks comes in and sometimes helps you, sometimes it doesn't. You know, if we get into this tournament and 10 pounds a day get you a check, doggone, I may have wanted to fish more to catch one of those 7-pounders or 2 of those 7-pounders a day and used a different bait. So it becomes a mindset thing. It just becomes a mindset thing. But he's been very successful to this point, that's for sure.
It reminds me of when Kennedy was throwing that wacky worm Cinco at West Point.
Yeah.
Underneath the isolated cypress.
Yeah.
Kicked everyone's butt doing that.
Yep.
Well, the only difference there, Matt, was there was only about 50 cypress trees on the whole lake.
He fished them all.
I remember that. Hey, Mark, would it make it easier for the guys? It's still probably going to be tough, but if there was a little bit of wind blowing in on these areas, would it make it a little easier?
I think it would. The wind's always your friend. It adds a little bit of current to the water. It breaks that light down. And then it would position those fish where right now Rick is having to fish all the way around the tree or the majority of the way around the tree. It would position them on an edge, on a corner of it, the left or the right side, and then a little pattern would develop. He could fish a little faster than what he's doing if there was some wind.
All right,
yeah, that was
questions?
his 4th one. That put him up to 712. It jumped him up to 18th. I mean,
Well,
who
he
knows how
probably pick a
accurate
jig up
this is.
after that. You know, he'll catch one more. He's on a pretty good pace to catch his 5th one. He knows he's probably going to catch his 5th one. So he'll probably put that wacky down a little bit, or he may even go to a bigger stick worm and fish for bigger fish that way to eliminate the smaller bite at that point.
All right, you unmuted there, Matt. There we go. All right, go ahead.
Yep. Mark, thanks for bringing up the wind thing. That's always been a question for me as a muskie fisherman and a walleye guy. I have, when I look at new body water or whatever, I'm always looking at the wind. Wind is one of my biggest things that I'm going to look at. And I don't hear a lot of that when I'm listening to BTL or I'm listening to other bass stuff. How important is wind, either shallow or deep, on bass? Is it like the walleyes and the muskies that I'm used to fishing, or is it a little bit different?
Well, a bass is an apex predator as well. So when wind blows, it positions them. 2 things position fish, Matt: current and wind. Current supersedes wind every time, but in most places you may not have wind. So that wind positions, you know, those fish are going to be looking into that current, and it lessens where you have to chase those fish. The one thing I will do prior to a tournament is I will watch where the wind has blown the prior 2 or 3 days. If you get a sustaining wind from a specific area that's blowing from a specific direction, and you find areas in which way that wind is blown into, that pushes bait fish to that area. There'll be more bait fish in the area. Those fish may be more active in those areas in which the wind has blown into. Doesn't always work, but in big lakes like Kentucky Lake or Eufaula or places like that where you have big coves, wind can definitely push those bait fish and dictate where the bass will follow. They're like us. They're going to go to the Golden Corral. They're going to go where that buffet is, and they're going to chase that shad buffet. That's definitely where they're going to go.
So, follow-up question on that: if you have wind coming in, and whether it's structure or whether it's cover, are those fish going to position themselves with wind, not current, but just with wind, on the front side of that cover or on the back side of that cover? What are they usually? How are they usually set up? As an example, Rick is like fishing right now.
It will most likely, if the wind was blowing directly where Rick is fishing, that's the first cast I would have made. There's more shade on that side of that, where the wind would be pushing into that tree. I would have thrown to the left side, and then I would come back to the right side because there's more shade on that left-hand side. It's that leading edge of a piece of structure. If the wind's blowing in on the right, I'm going to put my bait on that right-hand side because they're going to put that nose over there towards that leading edge. They know that moving water is going to bring them their next meal. So that's where I'm going to put it, where the most current is. If it's a smallmouth lake where you are, they might be in front of that piece of cover. Smallmouth tend to position in front of cover that has current that is blowing away, where the largemouth's a little lazier, a little bigger, a little blockier, and he will be behind the cover sometimes. So it depends on your species of fish as well.
You can do an 8-hour seminar on wind and how it affects it, when it's good and when it's bad, and based on the bottom composition and the bait in it and what your I mean, you could do a 2-day seminar on how wind affects the fish.
And Matt, that's one thing that anglers with less experience tend to do. They want to go get where it's nice and calm, so it's easy fishing. And it takes them a little time to realize that they may be fishing in the most difficult part of the lake, where I'm out there in the middle of 4-footers with wind blowing on a point, ripping a spinnerbait, catching big fish that way. So it takes a little time to realize that the wind is your friend.
I don't even focus. I just go out there to where I can barely hold it. And what are we fishing here? I don't know. We're just chucking it up against the bank. We're trying not to take one over the bow.
Wow. All right, guys. We are getting to the point. We're going to have to start wrapping this up. Jason, anything else for Mark?
I think I'm good. I guess the only question I had related to what we've just been talking about is on that. When you're fishing, like, say, a windy point, Mark, are you most of the time fishing with the wind and dragging your bait the way that the current would be because of the wind, or are you going against the wind, or does it just depend on the situation?
Well, it depends on the amount of wind. If it's a wind that's a 5 to 10 mile an hour, I'm facing into that wind and dragging it back across that point. If I'm out in 2-footers, I'm letting the wind push me across that point, knowing that I'm going to 4, 5, 6 cast in that key area.
Okay, cool. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Thanks, Jason. All right, Matt, anything else?
Yeah, I want to thank Mark. It's been awesome not only to listen, but also to be on today. The one question for the last question, I would guess, for me is, what is the thing that you miss most sitting here doing this versus being out on the water and competing?
Oh, a lot of it. I don't miss the travel, Matt. I'll be honest with that. I've had a lot of fun with my family here at home. Just knowing. Just that one bite, just pitching it out there, and one knocks a foot of slack in that flipping presentation or whatever I'm doing. I do miss that. I do miss all my great friends out there, the Brotherhood of Bassmaster Elite Anglers. I do miss that. In fact, when I hang this phone up and put this computer up, I'm going to go jump in the skeeter boat, take my son fishing, take my daughter with me, and we're going to go do a little fishing on the famed Lake X here in western Kentucky. We're going to sneak up there and catch us a few this afternoon.
There's a Lake X in every state.
Yeah.
Jeffrey's found it in Oklahoma. He just brags about it endlessly now. Oh, Lake X, Lake X, Lake X.
Found a Lake X in Texas, too.
Oh, you got one in Texas. Now we got one in Kentucky and Oklahoma. Well, before we get it, Matt, I will trade you a bass fishing trip for a muskie trip next year.
Totally.
If you stay in touch. Now, I can't teach you as much as Mark, but I mean, we can go fish some windy points.
Hey, I'm fine with that. We can do it.
Hey, Jeffries, can I mention one thing?
Sure.
I need everyone's help. We have the Asian carp problem that we have going on in our United States that is killing our fisheries. And the good folks at AFCO have been kind enough to team up with me on this particular T-shirt. It's the War on Carp T-shirt. $5 of every sale for this T-shirt goes to fight the war on carp. This is the nicest feeling T-shirt you've ever worn. Please go to AFCO.com, order a shirt, and help us fight these Asian carp. AFCO gave $10,000, Matt, to the local War on Carp here in Lyon County, Kentucky, where the carp fight started, to use as a subsidy, which means that $10,000 will pull out 250,000 pounds of carp in the Tennessee River and Cumberland Rivers this year. Please go to AFCO.com, buy your shirt, and know that $5 of every T-shirt that's sold goes to fight the war on carp.
Matt Florentino from AFCO sent Jeffries and I a couple of them. They are not just like a Hanes T-shirt with the carp on it. I mean, it's a high quality T-shirt, and it's really cool in the back. I wore it the last couple of weeks, but yeah, we showed it on the show, and AFCO doesn't screw around. I mean, I know they're a sponsor of the show. They sponsor me. They sponsor you, Mark. But
they get involved.
It is, I mean, I've talked to the sheds. I've been around them. You see the impact that they have in the freshwater fishing Hall of Fame with Milt and their history of it. They've got their 10% pledge. They actually put their money where their mouth is on their conservation product, from the AFCO bank bags to the war on carp, where they didn't just say, oh, how we can get involved. They went out, they got Mark Menendez, they became involved in it. They listened to the anglers. Like, seriously, over the past couple years, it's impressive to see how genuine AFCO is with their conservation projects. Obviously the goal is to sell stuff, but they really care about donating and giving the money. That I'm proud to wear it. I know you are too, Mark.
Yep.
Absolutely proud to be part of the gang. And it is really an honor that they come to my part of the world and help us fight this, as they do other invasives and other conservation products. It's a great company.
All right. Very cool, Mark. We'll do this again next Thursday, man. We'll be at the Chick.
Sounds great. Not Chick-fil-A.
No.
Chick-fil-A. Not the drive-thru.
Although I think some of the guys might want to be at Chick-fil-A during that week, but we'll see.
That's
All right.
going to be a grinder for sure. That one's really going to be a grind. It'll take good weight because there's so many big fish there.
Yeah.
But it's getting beat to death. There's a Redman Regional going on there, or BFL Rig, or whatever it's called now. My doctor is fishing that one. My back doctor is fishing that one, Mark. So he said a limit would go a long way last night when he gave me a
You got him on the juice?
I tried to help him. He knows his way around down there. So I tried to help him a little bit. It may be, my bill may go up when if he doesn't help me.
You're either.
What I gave him, but it'll be a tough tournament next week.
All right, man. Very, very good. I'll be in touch, Mark. We will talk about next week. I think what we might do next week is, it worked out pretty cool. Like, this is day one. It worked out pretty cool, the event that we did, I believe it was Guntersville, where we had day one in the books, and we did it on Friday, to where we actually had a good idea. Bass could really get a good idea who they were going to cover that second day, and it kind of added a little bit more. So take a look at your schedule. Maybe we can do it on Friday next week.
I'm good. Just go ahead and make plans to do it on Friday.
All right. So we're going to do day 2, Friday of next week. Can't wait for that one. Guys, thank you so much for being part of the watch party. And thank you for being fans of BTL. All right, guys. All right,
Thanks, guys.
All right,
See you guys, Matt, Jason.
All right, there you go. All right, very
That shirt's
cool.
only $22 anyway. It's not like a $50 t-shirt.
No, and for a great cause. All right, Mark, be safe, man. We will talk to you next week.
All right. I'm warming that truck up, and I'm headed to Lake X. So
right, man.
guys. I enjoyed it. Matt, you just set your alarm. Set 2 alarms so you don't miss another hour's worth of work.
I know. I did not sleep worth a crap last night. I woke up at 1, I woke up at 3, then I woke up at 5, and I just got up then, so.
All right. All right, Mark. Next week, man, we'll talk.
See you guys. Thanks for having me.
See ya. Man, he does such a great job, man, with that stuff.
Well, he's been doing it forever. He's the reason why he does so well with it is he's experienced every condition.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gone out on Santee Cooper,
Yeah.
like he said, and gone, oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right, a couple things real quick, and then we're out of here. Folks, I'm going to tell you, I mentioned it during the show, but I don't think you guys realize how difficult the task is this week for Bass to bring live coverage. With the guys being in the areas that they're in, with the lack of cell towers around there, I wish them nothing but the best. It is a massive challenge this week, Matthew, to bring the live coverage. Guys have to be just in a certain spot. Don't get frustrated. That's just part of it. That is the nature of what the surrounding areas are like in that massive, massive reservoir. So hopefully they will get some stuff. Hopefully the guys will be fishing in areas that they get a good signal and the fans can enjoy this brutally tough event. All right. What else you got, man?
That's all I got. I'm still impressed as heck.
With
5, 3, 4, and 7 for 19, a cool 19 pounds for Carl. And he's still got one more to go.
Yeah.
You know who also has really become, in my opinion, really solid out there? And we saw last year, and he made the Bassmaster Classic and had some stuff happen to him on Guntersville, or else he'd have been in the mix there. It's Luke Palmer. You know, we had him in the studio, and that guy can catch it, man.
He can.
Really catch. He's the Oklahoma version of Todd Faircloth. Not really flashy guy. Don't hear a lot of hooting and hollering from him, but man, just solid finish after solid finish.
Yeah. All right, great stuff. Big thanks to the fans and Mark Menendez on the watch party. Next week, Monday, make sure you check out the website. If we have morning shows, I will let you know then. But what is definitely going to happen is our 3-day coverage of the One Bass U.S. Open from Lake Mead, Monday, 4:30 p.m. Central Time till the weigh-in concludes, and then we'll have a short post-game show. We're going to do that each day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then on Friday, we will have the watch party with Mark once again from the Chick. And very excited to see what develops during that event. All right, Matthew, best of luck to you. Hopefully things will be okay with the hurricane coming up through Toledo Bend, and you will go out and absolutely smash.
That's the game plan.
All right, everybody out there, be safe. That is it. We are out of here.